Hi there, Agile friends. I'll come in here just with a quick note to let you know that the Agile Online Summit 2022 is coming soon. To know more, check out bit.ly/AOS2022. That's all one word, all lowercase, bit.ly/AOS2022. Now, stick around to the end of the episode if you want to know more, but for now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week, joining us from beautiful Düsseldorf in Germany is Nousheen Manzoor. Hey, Nousheen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Vasco. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Nousheen believes that the future of leadership is kindness and empathy. And the same goes for any role which involves individuals and teams, like the Scrum Master role, which is exactly what we're going to talk about this week. So, Nousheen, take a little bit time and tell us a bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
So, this was something I started my career as a QA, and I have been a QA for almost a decade before I kind of made this switch to the Scrum Master role. And the reason was, even as in the QA role, when I was like a QA lead and so on, I felt like I was more enjoying the part of interactions with our teams and kind of helping them grow. Even as a test lead, I would coach them, mentor them, help them remove impediments, have feedbacks and whatnot. And then when this kind of a role, it came to me, by chance, I would say. I was asked to step in for a Scrum Master who had left us, and the project was kind of critical. So I took on this role initially, like 50% as a QA and 50% as a Scrum Master, which was not ideal, but I would say that was how I kind of landed into this role of being a Scrum Master.
Yeah, this is a very familiar story. Many of our listeners have probably heard a similar story in the past. And it is by chance, as you say, but there's also this aspect of, as you said, you've always thought that helping teams was part of your job, right? Like it was almost like an inbuilt personality trait.
Yes.
And of course, especially when we end up in this role by chance, as you described it, it also happens that we come to it perhaps before we are fully ready. And obviously today's Fail Monday here on the podcast, so we explore one of those stories when we weren't fully ready. So Nousheen, tell us that story step by step, and then we'll dive into the details and the takeaways later. But talk us through that story of learning and, of course, failure as well in your career as a Scrum Master.
Absolutely. And this is the story that I bring to you from the very first role that I just mentioned about when I moved as a Scrum Master. And it was like a huge project, I would say, because we were building something right from having from the data source till how the data would appear on the UI. So we had different teams working on this project, data teams, UI, API, and whatnot. And the product manager, of the team, she was quite, I would say, pushy in the sense that she was more focused on delivery, which is good, but then she was also ready to compromise quality kind of in exchange for delivering on time. And when I started off as a Scrum Master, already being a QA in the project had given me a bit of understanding of how we are working as a project. But then when I started as a Scrum Master, that kind of a thing I carried with me. Like I was always seeing things from that perspective I saw when I was working on ground, without considering probably I should think about the teams who are working on it, work with them, understand.
Can you give me an example of that? Can you give like an anecdotal example of that?
For example, when I was in the meetings, like maybe dailies or let's take, for example, dailies, I would always kind of question more rather than let the team speak, because that's how I was doing when I was a QA lead. I was kind of making it more like a status meeting, which was absolutely not the way it should be. And I was asking a lot of questions and kind of pushing people rather than letting them a chance to speak or do things that the way they should be done. So this was like one example of how that kind of a mindset shift was still not there for me. And that's why I was unable to kind of settle in my role and have that trust from my team that they can count on me when it comes to taking care of them or taking care of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's your attitude. You're there almost as a QA, right? Like trying to get the things done right.
Yes.
And what happened next?
So this also took me a while, because there were a lot of things which I later on realized maybe I could have focused more on that. For example, something like we were using man hours as estimates. And this was also quite frustrating for the team. And earlier, when I was very busy, still settling in from that mindset of being a QA to a Scrum Master, I kind of ignored all these things. And I started taking everything on me, like I need to fix this, I need to do this, talking to leadership, talking to everything. And I realized that I reached a certain point where things were not improving. We still had the same issues on and on in the retros. We were not really also productive. Because I was kind of missing the picture that I need to work on the ground with the teams who are delivering it.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think this is important for our Scrum Master friends out there. So you were focusing on improving, right? You were even spending perhaps too much time trying to fix things yourself, but things weren't improving. Now, when you look back, and you, of course, know a lot more, obviously, why was that happening?
Yes, I think the most important thing that I spoke was feedback and empathy. I was failing to talk to the teams who were facing those issues. Like, for example, we are not able to deliver our sprint goals or our sprint deliverables. Why? Rather than asking them, talking to them, like, what is stopping them? What is it that I can support them with to make it better? I was just concentrating on the higher level things, like pushing things away from the team, but that was not helping, because on the ground, the issue was there was problem with the team collaboration. We had different set of teams and they were not talking to each other. Hence the issues kept on. Like, for example, there was a dependency on the data team to give us some data which the UI had to use. They were not talking to each other, and in the sprint planning we missed to align those tickets, and hence there was no data. So what would the UI work on? So the ticket could not be finished in the sprint, and so on. So I was kind of missing this kind of a view that I need to talk to teams, see how to build that collaboration. Basically, I think what I missed was setting up those ways of working in a team.
Okay, so that's a little bit too fast for me. So the first thing I get, right? Like there was something that was happening outside your observation, right? Like it was something that you were not privy to, you did not know, and then later on you discovered. And then when we go into, okay, but what was missing? You said, I didn't set up the ways of working. Okay, but that's a little bit too fast. Like, walk us through that. Like, how did you get to that conclusion, right? In other words, today, what do you look at? What do you look out for in order to try to avoid the same problem in your role as a Scrum Master?
Okay, so when I set out with any team as a Scrum Master, the first thing I do is talk to them, set up like a small one-on-one to understand what is the background they are coming for, what have they worked before, and what kind of a team environment it was. Then set up like a small workshop with the whole team together, make it a bit fun, have some team building activities, and then also walk us through our common working guidelines. For example, how do we tackle absences? What should be the best way that how do we communicate in the team if we are taking vacations, and how do we inform everyone so that we know we can plan things better. The other thing would be maybe, for example, how do we what would be our definition of ready or definition of done, and so on. So as a team, I let us get together, brainstorm the ideas, and I don't feed them anything. I let them discuss it. The earlier mistake was I was the one giving away all the information. They would act on it somehow. But I now let the team tell me, okay, as a team, this is what would work for us. And I let them build on top of it. It might not be that in the first place we get everything right, but we build onto it. We are agile. but that base guideline is something that we agree to as a team. Because this is also something I learned. If I tell them something, maybe not everyone agrees with it, but when it comes from them or our team together as a group, everyone is good with it and they want
Actually,
to follow it.
that's a great takeaway to start with. I mean, I could highlight so many more things from what you said, but what you just said, like when you bring questions to the team and they define the answers, then they're committed to it, right? Of course, we need to assess that there's enough diversity, that everybody gets to talk, that it's not just one person owning the meeting, etc., etc. But if you take those facilitation guidelines into account, then it's the team's shared decision.
Yes.
And here's the added benefit. You didn't mention it, but that's something you got immediately when they define their ways of working, is that then we have permission to hold them accountable. Because
yes,
we can
absolutely.
say, hey, I didn't say this. You said it. You can change it if you want. But until you change it, you have to do it like you agreed.
Absolutely. And I think this is also quite important that everyone understands when it comes to changing something. They understand the reasoning why the change is required, and then everyone is on board before we actually make the change. This was also quite helpful to me in my current role.
Absolutely. Everybody's on board when we need to make the change. That's an incredibly powerful realization that comes from empowering the team, letting the team decide. Thank you for sharing that story, Nousheen.
Thank you.
Hi there, Agile friends. Thank you for sticking around to know more about this year's Agile Online Summit. The summit will have 4 keynotes and 4 tracks you will not want to miss. The keynotes will touch on critical topics for us, from delivering on time to helping you to focus on sustainability. The 4 tracks are tools. So we'll focus on tools you need to excel at your job, but also your mission. We'll also have a track on sustainability, which is, of course, about people and their sustainable pace, but it's also about how do we bring sustainability to the products and the planet we inhabit. We'll have a 3rd track about happiness, talking about doing what we love and, most crucially, loving what we do. And finally, the 4th track will be live. It will be mostly hands-on sessions to help you roll up your sleeves together with the presenters. Oh, and we will also have a coaching clinic, as we usually do, organized to help you discuss and get inspired to solve the hardest challenges you face at work. This year, we'll have a special emphasis on interaction with your peers, so get your ticket and join the Slack at bit.ly/AOS 2022. As always, we have free tickets for anyone that wants to attend live, and the VIP tickets for those of you who want to keep the videos forever. So check them out at bit.ly/AOS 2022. I'll see you on the conference floor. Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.